The foundation of science is the humility to learn, not the arrogance of expertise. It doesn't make sense to say the experts say and therefore you should believe it. It makes sense to say here is the evidence and it's a comet beyond a reasonable doubt because of this and that pieces of evidence.
Yesterday on live television, Harvard's top astrophysicist looked directly into the camera and said something that should terrify every single person watching this video. The foundation of science is the humility to learn, not the arrogance of expertise. That wasn't a philosophical musing. That was Avi Loeb, the former chair of Harvard's astronomy department, directly challenging NASA's acting administrator Sean Duffy about what they're hiding regarding 3I Atlas. And what came next in that interview reveals a cover-up so blatant, so documented, that even the government's own timeline exposes the lie. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is checkable. Answer the biggest question in human history. Here's what happened. On Wednesday night, NASA Administrator Sean Duffy went on Newsmax and made a definitive statement about 3I Atlas. He said, and I quote, "It walks like a comet, talks like a comet, struts like a comet. It's a comet." Case closed, right? NASA has spoken. The experts have decided. Move along. Except 24 hours later, Avi Loeb appeared on the same show and systematically dismantled that entire premise with one devastating question. It doesn't make sense to say the experts say, and therefore you should believe it. It makes sense to say, here is the evidence, and it's a comet beyond a reasonable doubt because of this and that. Notice what Loeb is demanding. Not authority, evidence. Because here's what NASA isn't telling you. The evidence doesn't support their conclusion, and Loeb brought receipts. He told Newsmax that 3I Atlas is currently displaying 7 separate jets emanating from its surface. 7. For context, a typical comet at this distance from the sun might have 1 or 2 jets, small plumes of gas escaping from pockets of ice melting under solar radiation. But 7 jets? That's not typical. That's not even unusual. That's physically problematic. And Loeb didn't just point this out, he did the math. He calculated the surface area required to produce the mass flow rates observed in these 7 jets, and here's his conclusion delivered on national television. There isn't enough surface area on a natural comet to accommodate the amount of mass flowing through these jets. There's definitely a puzzle here to be resolved. Let me translate that. According to the calculations of a Harvard astrophysicist who has published over 1,000 peer-reviewed papers, 3I Atlas is physically too small to be producing what we're observing, if it's natural. NASA's response? Trust us, it's a comet. Now, here's where this goes from suspicious to damning. Duffy defended NASA's silence on the high-resolution images by blaming the government shutdown. He said they couldn't release the photos because of manpower shortages during the 42-day federal shutdown. Reasonable explanation, right? Except Loeb pulled out a calendar and exposed the timeline. We've had 45 days since the images were taken. The HiRISE camera on NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter photographed 3I Atlas on October 2nd, when the comet passed within 18 million miles of Mars. That's October 2nd. Today is November 14th. That's 43 days. The government shutdown ended on November 11th. That's 40 days after the images were captured. So let's be crystal clear here. NASA has been sitting on the highest resolution images ever taken of an interstellar object for a month and a half. And during that entire time, they've released exactly 0 information about what those images show. But here's the detail that proves this isn't about the shutdown. NASA's HiRISE website has been releasing new images of Mars every single day throughout this entire period. Every single day. Yet on that same website, they posted a specific disclaimer about 3I Atlas images. Any images of the interstellar comet 3I Atlas are considered NASA-wide news. Because the federal government is in shutdown, communications of NASA news have been suspended. Read that again. They singled out 3I Atlas. Not Mars images, not routine orbital photos, just 3I Atlas. Why? What is in those images that required classification as NASA-wide news? What did HiRISE see on October 2nd that NASA doesn't want you to see until they control the narrative? And why, now that the shutdown has ended, are those images still classified 3 days later? While NASA sits on evidence, independent astronomers have been watching 3i Atlas with every telescope they can point at it, and what they're seeing makes the 7 Jets problem look minor. On November 11th, 3 days ago, the Nordic Optical Telescope captured new images of 3i Atlas. What those images revealed shouldn't be possible. 3i Atlas is still intact. It's still a single body. It didn't fragment. You need to understand what that means. On October 29th, 3i Atlas reached perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun. It came within 130 million miles, passing through temperatures and tidal forces that tear comets apart. Every natural comet that passes this close to the Sun experiences structural stress. Most fragment, some completely disintegrate. It's why we have a whole category of comets called sun grazers, because they don't survive the encounter. But 3i Atlas did. And it's not just that it survived, it's how it survived. Those 7 jets Loeb mentioned, images from November 8th and 9th showed jets extending over 1 million kilometers towards the Sun and 3 million kilometers in the opposite direction. For reference, that's about 7 times the distance from Earth to the Moon. These aren't little puffs of gas. These are massive, sustained outflows that require enormous energy. Loeb calculated what it would take to produce these jets naturally. For a comet to sublimate enough carbon dioxide ice to create this mass flow, it would need an absorbing surface area of at least 1,600 square kilometers. That's a sphere 23 kilometers in diameter. But Hubble Space Telescope observations show 3i Atlas has a maximum diameter of just 5.6 kilometers. The math doesn't work. The object is too small to naturally produce what we're observing, yet it's producing it anyway. And it somehow maintained structural integrity through perihelion when every model predicted fragmentation. As Loeb wrote in his analysis, given the large-scale jets reported recently, the fact that 3i Atlas remains a single body is surprising for a natural comet. Surprising is academic speak for this shouldn't be happening. So where does this leave us? NASA says it's definitely a comet, but won't show us their best evidence. The math says it can't be a natural comet based on what we're observing, and an interstellar object that traveled billions of years to reach our solar system is doing things that violate our models of how comets behave. Loeb has been transparent about his position. He's identified 10 specific anomalies displayed by 3i Atlas and has stated that these anomalies motivate the possibility, not certainty, possibility that this could be an extraterrestrial technological object. And he's given us a date when we'll know more. December 19th, 2025. That's 3i Atlas makes its closest approach to Earth within 170 million miles. Between now and then, observatories worldwide will be watching. ESA's JUICE spacecraft is observing it right now through November 25th. The James Webb Space Telescope has additional observations scheduled for December. But here's what makes this December 19th critical. If 3i Atlas is under any kind of intelligent control, that closest approach to Earth is when we'd see course corrections. It's when any propulsion system would need to fire to alter trajectory. And in an interview with News Nation 2 days ago, Loeb said something that should be echoing in your mind. The coming weeks will be really decisive. He also warned in multiple interviews that we should hope 3i Atlas doesn't deliver unwanted gifts to Earth during the holiday season. What does he mean by that? He hasn't specified. But consider an object that survived perihelion intact, that's producing impossible mass flows from 7 jets, that's potentially too small to naturally do what it's doing. That object is now heading directly towards Earth's orbital plane. NASA has the images that could answer these questions. They took them 43 days ago. They processed daily Mars images throughout the shutdown, but classified the 3i Atlas photos as too sensitive to release. And when Harvard's top astrophysicist went on national television and challenged NASA's administrator to provide evidence instead of authority, the response was silence. So I'm asking the same question Loeb asked. Where is the evidence? Show us the HiRISE images. Release the data. Let the scientific community analyze what you saw on October 2nd. Because right now, the only thing NASA has proven is that they're hiding something. And with December 19th just 5 weeks away, we deserve to know what's coming.